Hello, this is Blair Stanislao with the Happy Lion Center. Welcome to our podcast, Mystical and Infamous, where we have playful and easy conversations about anything mystical, getting to the heart of all things strange and weird. Join us in a bit of magical tomfoolery, spreading the alchemy of love and light. And now, we invite you to enjoy the show. All right, so I'm going to start with, I had a dream a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, I'd have to look to see what it was. It's been a little while. And the dream was that there were these two, a male and a female. I don't know how old they were, young adults or young or old teenagers or something. But they were sitting at a table and they were drawing something out. So I like zoom into what this is. And it's this person is, the man is drawing out. They have these horizontal lines. So they are parallel. Mm-hmm. So there's several of them on the page. And what he was doing is he was showing me how timeline shifts work. And it was those horizontal lines and then like this F, like a fancy F, the fancy lowercase f. Okay. So like curves at the top, goes to the bottom and curves again. Okay. But that line, that curved line would go from one timeline to the next one down below. And what it was instructed in the dream was that at the intersections, there's like an imbalance. And so meaning an imbalance in between masculine and feminine energies. So what happens is you just kind of, you notice the imbalance and then you adjust. And when you adjust, then you go down that path essentially. And not that it takes time. You just happen to now you're the next one, right? So that's how we timeline shift. That was at least the dream. And so it's not like it's big, humongous jumps. Like you go from here to being in Star Wars, like in one fell swoop, but that's how it shifts in terms of, okay, this thing is now shifted. Now this thing is shifted. And each of those horizontal lines is like a little bit different of a reality. So that was the message that I got. And the person who did the dream interpretation for me, Holly, she actually said that she channeled on it because we didn't even have a conversation about it. But she channeled on it to figure out if she could tell me more about it. And it was really ironic because as she describes this to me, she's like, it's these parallel lines. And so she described the same exact thing. It wasn't curved for her, but I mean, like I saw it in my dream. And she said that I had done that.
Blair, I wish you'd given me this information 3 weeks ago.
Well, so how's it been playing out?
So 3 weeks ago, I went to a conference in South Florida in Fort Lauderdale, and it was a spiritual conference. And another friend of mine flew in from North Carolina to go to the conference as well. And we shared an Airbnb, and the conference was great. And on Sunday, when we checked out of the Airbnb, I took her to the airport so she could fly home. And then I drove back to Tallahassee. When I got back to Tallahassee, I found that I had lost my day planner.
Oh, yeah.
But everything in my life is in that day planner. And I knew where I had it. I had it on the bed in my room in the Airbnb. And so it was 8 hours later that I was able to realize that I needed to contact the host. And I contacted him and I said, I'm pretty sure I left my day planner on the bed. Can you please send it to me or take pictures of the pages or something? I didn't hear from him. So that was Sunday night.
Okay.
And Monday I get up and right across from where I sit, where I work, I have one of these atomic clocks that syncs up to Denver, right? So it's always right. And I had an appointment at 9:00 in the morning. And I look at that clock and it says 9:10. And I knew that I was like cutting it really close to get there, get online, get on Zoom. And I was like, no. And I look on my computer and it says, no, it's 8:58. And back at that atomic clock and it says, nope, it's 9:10. And how can that be? Because that thing syncs up to Denver and I hadn't touched it, and the batteries were recent, so it wasn't like it was out of battery. And it took me the rest of that day to figure out how to get that thing on right time. But that was another example. And the list just keeps going on and on and on. So about Thursday, I did an interspeak clearing on that.
Okay.
Why?
You just did it for yourself or you did it for somebody?
For myself, to figure out what was going on. So that was on Thursday. And what it came up in the session was that the reason why all this was happening was lack of trust in God from me. So apparently I had made this my God, and it was a reality that I couldn't access anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Um, and I mean, I'm just starting to get myself situated where I'm on this new timeline where I've actually followed the line. And I did that in meditation while I was getting acupuncture last week. And I just asked Spirit to please move me off of the old timeline and onto the appropriate timeline, whatever that means,
Yeah.
and pull all the hooks off of the old one so that I can move down that
All the way. Yeah. Uh-huh.
to where I need to be. And I also said, and it would be really nice if that could be the same timeline where my beloved partner is.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. So the person who was interpreting the dream, she said, she got that I was doing this as a child, but I didn't know that I was doing it because it felt like play.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, and I know you are, but if the listeners are familiar with manifestation, like how do you kind of control what it is you're creating? There's a huge factor in that. If you just kind of go into the play of the thing. And I can't say that I really feel like that's even wrong. I think I do that anyways. Even I think she said I actually help people, which I do think I do that. And it's what I got in the dream, which has been confirmed other ways too, is that the noticing of the energies being off and adjusting yourself or adjusting the energies is not always about physically doing something. Sometimes, a lot of times it's just about a thought, but
Yeah.
like recognizing that you were treating the planner as your God and therefore it needs to shift.
Yeah.
When you make that shift, then it all gets aligned again and things start flowing. So is that what's happened when you did that with acupuncture?
Well, sort of, because, when I realized I didn't have this anymore, I kept thinking it would turn up. So I didn't want to go buy a new one. Right. So I started trying to do it on my phone. I can't do it on my phone. I have to see things laid out spatially for a whole week at a time. And I can't get it that way. I even tried putting everything in my phone and then printing the month. Mm-hmm. Well, the tiny little print, where it would do that, I mean, you have to have a magnifying glass to be able to read that. So that wasn't good for me either. And so finally, the guy, as soon as I did the session, the next day he contacted me and he said, "We found your day planner."
So you did release it and then they said you could have it back.
And well, sort of it, some of it. He never actually sent it to me. He took pictures of all the pages. There were a couple of pages he missed. Oh. And so like I missed an appointment with my craniosacral therapist last Thursday because he didn't send me that page.
Oh.
I had it in my phone, but once he gave me that information, I started putting it in the new one. I quit looking at my phone. So I was still kind of sliding back and forth on these things.
Yeah.
But part of the realization that I got out of all of that, I thought was pretty profound, and it really had nothing to do with which timeline I'm on, but it's just that every time I think a thought, I'm actually creating something on some timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's not this 2024 March Tallahassee timeline. It might be something in the fairy realm that I've created, or it might be something on another planet, like on
I would
Sirius.
assume it's probably always where there's no resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the least amount of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I got to believe a lot of people are going through this. If you're now telling me that you've been dealing with this and I've been dealing with it, and I've talked to several other people who have. So this must be a fairly common occurrence for those of us who are on our path.
I think so. And I think it's, I don't know that there's a lot of people who actually talk about it. I mean, there are people who talk about it, but I don't know. What I'm saying is, I don't know that there's a lot of people who talk about it with the people who aren't of this world, meaning of this thought process, right? Because even if I were to say something to my husband, I don't even think he'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Right. They think that we're crazy.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, basically. They think you're
And
crazy.
maybe we are, but it's a good
Yeah,
crazy.
maybe. But what
I
does
like
it matter?
crazy.
Even if, I mean, like if you can shift the timeline and the thing occurs, then who cares if you're crazy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, so things are starting to morph for me. So my birthday was last Friday, and I've got this client. Actually, he was the first person who studied interspeak with me way back in the day, 22 years ago or 24 years ago, however long it was. And so he's way into astrology, but he's kind of an astrology hacker. And so every year he will send me a text and go, "Where are you going to be at 6:52 a.m. on March the 1st?" And I'll tell him, and so this year, of course, that was going to be in Tallahassee, where I was born. And he does a solar return report for me. And, I've looked at these things and, it kind of makes my eyes spin.
Mm-hmm. They're very detail oriented. Yes.
Yeah, very. And not kind of like the details I was looking for. But this one, I looked at it for, I don't know why. And I was like, oh my God. So I do have an astrologer friend who's not a hacker. And so I sent this to her, and her name is Sarah, and she lives in the Netherlands. And I said, "So does this say what I think it says?" And she came back to me and she said, "Yeah, pretty much." She said, "I don't go by solar return. I go by chart progression. And that's how I find that." She said that she finds that to be more accurate. But basically what it's saying in spades is that I'm going to get married this year.
Oh, so the real interesting thing is to do it in different, like if you were to have her do a progression and then you did it in some other kind of version of the report, if they all kind of converge, which they probably will, like they're not going to be all the same. Did she do one?
Yeah. And they basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You can come to my wedding in September if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just have it in Montana,
Well, in September, this would be really pretty up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did it say, I guess it was talking about a relationship then, but did it said like specifically, this is a good time for that? Or
yeah,
I could run it for you too on my stuff and see what it says.
She said every possible relationship trigger is there, like now. But she said it's really going to come to fruition in 6 months, but it's all happening now.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. The energies are shifting now.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I was like,
you just admitted you did that in your acupuncture session. So
I know it's amazing to me that I think all of this kind of had to line up. I had to get off of that old timeline to get onto this new one. And I just kind of happened to have that thought, well, can this please be the one that the beloved partner's on? And I think I created that. Yeah. I mean, I haven't met him today yet, but maybe tonight. I don't know.
I personally think there's I can only speak for myself, but I'm not known for being the most on time. We'll put it that way. My husband calls it Blair time. Okay. I think there's some energies around time that I don't really like that are human, in the sense that people get really uptight. They get really upset about something. And, in my opinion, it's like, well, not everybody has control of everything. So I don't know why you're getting so angry about it. And bottom line is I don't like being around angry all the time. So I just choose not to be that way. Good or bad, it is what it is. But what I've noticed is that when these things occur and that you're like shifting, it usually occurs in a way that's, I feel like, for me, but that's me who doesn't pay attention to every single second that's happening, right? Like I'm there, I'm involved in it, but I don't watch the clock. I feel for the time more than I do than I actually look at the clock. That it usually happens in a way that's so subtle that it feels very natural. Mm-hmm. That the shift itself actually feels natural. Like we can explain, you left your planner at the Airbnb, and yet, so you were scrounging around trying to collect your thoughts, but then when you finally did a session, then it actually shifted.
Yeah. And it actually was not really about time or about the day planner at all. It was about trust.
Yes.
So that was kind of strange to me. But I see, I'm the opposite of you. I'm kind of OCD about time. I
Uh-huh.
hate being late. I,
Mhm.
you know, I do everything in my power to make sure that I am where I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be there. And to me, it's very embarrassing. So when my cranial sacral therapist called me last Thursday,
Yeah.
and the fact that her name showed up on my phone and she's never called me before, we're not
Oh
like
yeah.
friends, I'm like, oh, Sherry, am I supposed to be in an appointment with you right now? Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah.
I actually understand that, but I think, I don't know how to describe it. I'm also one of those people who loses everything. Like I
Hmm.
just had a conversation with a friend of mine where me growing up, I had multiple people saying to me, I don't know how you keep track of your head. If your head wasn't on your shoulders, you would not have it. And even to this day, my husband will say, like, well, how did you lose that? Like, I don't know. It just magically disappears.
No,
But then
because you
it
go
also
to
magically
another dimension and it will magically reappear when you get back to that same,
yeah,
where the little F is between here and here. And
yeah.
then it'll show up again. Or that's what I find for me.
No, that's exactly what happens, and that's why I don't fret about it so much. Like,
Yeah.
I don't. It doesn't work for people who I don't think who don't understand that, or they really are kind of. I would describe them as neurotic. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but
Mhm.
really uptight about time. Is it because they're not like letting it go? I think on some level they're not able to like fully get into the moment. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so
Yeah.
then the magic isn't really occurring because they're not relaxing. They're not letting that go. And this helps with creativity because if you are watching the clock with creativity, it does not help. Like it just makes everything worse. All you're thinking about is the time instead of like whatever it is you're making.
Right.
Um, but I can't say that that's the only reason I would do that. I mean, I just kind of get involved. You know me, we get involved in a conversation, you can get totally lost in the conversation.
Sure.
And I just like come up for air and look at the clock. I'm like, oh. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes about 2 minutes before I'm supposed to do something, I'm like, oh, I think I was supposed to do something.
I relate to that one too.
Yeah.
And I think, and normally when I leave my car keys in another dimension or an earring or whatever, and those things happen a lot
Yeah.
and they usually do turn up, I don't worry about it. And I
Yeah.
figure, well, it's going to show up when it shows up. But when this thing went missing,
Yeah.
I let it throw me under a bus. So I think this is the trust I had, it says in the Bible, you cannot serve God and mammon. I'd made this into mammon,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to serve that, and I got that.
So what have you done? Have you done anything differently since then to get back to
Bought,
the trust?
bought a new day planner. Yeah, but I think just understanding that I really do have to just let go and know that everything is happening as it's supposed to and relax. I think that's what's helping me to relax onto this new
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I still, even though I'm not that way about time, I still have difficulty with that because I think everybody has to learn how to relax. That's going into the feminine. So that's the shifting to the feminine, right? So
Yes.
you're trusting that things are going to happen and that you can respond in the moment. And I've definitely battled with that. I would say probably all my life. And it does have to do with it's a very similar energy to watching the clock and being very aware of what's happening and what's happening next and what just happened. And, but again, that's not being in the moment.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's that feminine energy. Actually your method. So I did that for a little while and I just want to share with you the thing that I liked your page that describes if you're having difficulty with muscle testing, it's because you're not trusting, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that muscle testing works. Somebody can do it on me and I don't have any question about it. I know it's happening. But when I do the muscle testing for myself, I have more difficulty. And then I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. The words that are going through my head, so the mental part, it starts and then I play with it and I try and do the muscle testing. I do about 3 or 4 times. And then that part will now shut up. And so then I'm just like, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing it like that. So
Yeah.
what I've done instead of doing muscle testing is I don't know how to describe it other than sensing the energy.
Mhm.
What I really like about Interspeak there is I don't have a clue what's on the numbers. Like,
Mhm.
I know there's 4 quadrants, there's 9 things in each quadrant. And so that's all I have to know is 4 and 9, right? Like, so I just go through the numbers and then I can get the sense. And then when I get the sense, sometimes I'll know a little bit more information, but I'm not necessarily doing the muscle testing.
Yeah.
Um, but
And you don't have
I
to.
keep
That's
track.
the beauty of it.
Yeah.
The reason why it looks like you have to is because there are 999,998 people who can't get the feeling of it.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a way for all of those people to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to, and muscle testing will work, if they will allow the trust component. But I mean, more often than not, I know the number before I even test.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll just get a number, which is
Yeah.
really, really helpful. Matter of fact, I don't know if this is weird or not, but this is the truth. So we have our little meditation group and we meet twice a week now. And this was several months ago. I don't remember when I made this thing, but I made a video of what we do. And so we videotaped one of our people demonstrating the Qigong that we do, and we narrated it. So she recorded her voice over it, and I put it all together. And it's good. It's not exactly the same as when other people are meditating, like we're doing it as a group. So it's got a different energy, even on the recording, but it's pretty good. So one time as I don't know that we had actually done it or not, but we did a meditation and I knew that the topic was about this video that we were making. And right before the end of the meditation, I got $5.99 right in my face, like just blaring so clear that I was like, okay, that's how much I'm going to charge. So it's
Mhm.
$5.99, right?
Mhm.
Um, but that wouldn't on the 3D plane, that doesn't make a lot of sense. My husband was over there. How long have you spent making this video? And how much time did you put it in? How much time did she put in? And, so you're going to have to sell this many videos to make up that. And I get where he's coming from, but I don't think that's the way that the spirit world
No,
operates.
that's the linear
Yeah.
viewpoint, and it's different than that because it's I don't know. I hate to have these words come out of my mouth because I don't want to create that, but it's really not about the money.
Yeah.
It's
No.
about energetic exchange.
Mhm.
And just because it says $5.99 doesn't mean it's only this amount of energy. $5.99 could be this amount of energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had sessions sent. I don't know if it was in a session or if it was just like normal time or what, but I finally had the thought, well, if a million people saw it, or a million people bought it, that's still a lot of money. And I don't know
Yeah,
how to justify making this video that took me 15 hours or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And we I well, like you said, I can only speak for myself. I have to follow my guidance on pricing.
Yeah.
So when I first started doing Interspeak, of course, I did not know what I was doing. I had no clue or how to charge for it or whatever. So I asked what was I supposed to charge, and I heard $77. I was like, okay, so that's what I did for a while. And then one day, out of nowhere, I was told, now you can charge $111.
Okay.
And that's what I charged for years.
Uh-huh.
And then one day on my birthday, I heard we're giving you a raise and you can now charge $144.
Okay.
And that's been probably 10 years now that's what I've charged. I charge 144 for everything, basically,
Yeah.
because that's what I was told to do. And it doesn't really matter because I'm extremely well provided for. So
Yeah.
whether I charge $144 or 144 cents, I don't think it matters because my resources come vertically and their energy. And so there, yeah.
Well, even I find there's some comfort. I mean, I really adore that I'm in this group of people now so that you can say I got this number. So I can say I got 5.99 and
Yeah,
I don't have to explain it any further,
right.
So that's really nice. But it also quiets my mind a lot. Like when I get the answer and I know that that's what I saw, it's kind of like when you have a dream and you're remembering the dream and you're like, no, it was like this. And there were these little parts and this is what happened. And this is what the feeling of it was and all of that. And the more you think about it, the more you can remember it.
Yeah.
And then if you separate yourself from that dream and you're talking about something else and they ask you about the dream again, you say, no, it wasn't like that. It was like this. So you still can have that clarity because it's become this thing that has embedded in you so you fully understand. So these numbers feel like that too.
Yeah.
Uh,
I get that.
yeah. Yeah. So it gives me, at least gives me a little bit of, okay, well, I'm sorry you don't understand it, but this is what the answer is.
Right. Yeah.
Leave it at that. This is what mom says, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. My video, my price.
Yeah. There's also, I've done some timeline shifting work with other people who do like hypnosis stuff. And my experience of that was we essentially, I think there was some NLP in there. I don't know. Are you familiar with NLP?
Yeah. I don't really remember because I was playing with NLP like 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, I think it was like, I think if I could be speaking incorrectly, but basically what I remember about it is that you talk about the energy of something and then they ask you to put a color to it. So that essentially causes you to kind of pay attention to it more, maybe put a shape to it, you know, and then you kind of like when you're putting this energy away, I don't remember, maybe you wrap it in love. You just do this like ceremonial thing that helps you to kind of see the energy of whatever that is that you're working on and manipulate it in a way that can visually be explained, but also is clearer in terms of, you know what this energy represents. Okay, now we've got it in a container. Now you can kind of do what you need to with it, that kind of thing. So I've done that kind of stuff with timeline shifting. And that was really interesting from the outside. I would say it was like, we kind of we talked about the energy some, but we went into the experience that I had trouble with. And then we essentially spent time imagining and really talking about the details of how it could be differently. And then of course we packaged it up, whatever, we did our stuff. So you did the formal, whatever it was. And it was really interesting because it was like opening up to a different way of thinking. And I've had a different energy session with a friend of mine, Shannon, and she did the same thing too. So I have an older sister with whom I don't really get along. And we were talking about something with her, and the experience I had with her is she was the first person who has ever been able to open me up to the idea of it actually not being what it had been or what I've always told myself that it was. But the opening up of that is what I feel like that timeline shift was. It felt, I could just feel the energy shift. I felt it in the session. It felt like 3 or 4 days. It was a big shift. And it was just like we were talking about in the parallel lines. It's a shifting in how you're thinking. And when you can change how you're thinking, then you can open up to new possibilities.
Yeah. And while you're saying that, I just had this epiphany, I think. So a couple of years ago, when I was really heads down and trying to manifest and magnetize my beloved partner to me, I decided what better way to do this than to write a book about it. And so I wrote this book, Conjunctio. And the thing of the book was that the house was for sale next door, and it really was. And so this guy, Samuel, buys the house. And then we become friends, and then the rest is history. Okay. Well, so when the house finally sold, it was actually bought by a young couple with 6 children under the age of 10.
Wow.
I know. Talk about some creativity going on in that house. And so that didn't happen, but the book felt so right. I mean, I still, to this day, I keep waiting for Samuel to just walk in the front door, because it was that real. Okay. Fast forward to today, and whatever this timeline is, the house on the other side of me is fixing to go on the market. What am I going to say about it?
That's exciting. Yeah.
I mean, the couple that have lived there for 1 million years, she passed away at the beginning of COVID from pancreatic cancer, and he's now going into a nursing home, because he's he's on hospice and whatever. And so they're getting ready to put the house on the market. And I'm like, interesting. Who
So
knows?
I know that you've done this and been aware of it in the past, but when are you aware of the time at which you feel like the beginning of the manifestation occurs? Like you think a thought or you have a feeling or something, and you just know that this thing is going to occur. It's going to come up in your life in reality. Do you remember that feeling when that happens?
No,
Interesting.
because usually it's so subtle.
Hmm.
Like I'll think a thought, and the next thing you know, it's shown up.
Hmm.
And so I've never actually had a chance to think about, well, how was I feeling when I thought that? Because blam, it's there, you
Yeah.
know? And and I've always said, if I could bottle that formula, I could
Hmm.
be a millionaire, multimillionaire, because everybody would want it. But I don't really know exactly how I do it or how I
Yeah.
feel. I just know that when I was writing that book,
Uh-huh.
my God, it felt so real. And when the drama parts would come, it was tearing my heart out. I mean, I would cry and it was like, oh no, you know. And so it was that real as I was writing it.
Yeah.
But again, now it's been at least 3 years since I
Yeah, but
wrote
that's
that.
not very long, really.
Yeah.
Um, I I didn't realize until I don't know that I've ever shared this with you, but um, so my husband died in 2013, my first husband.
You told me that.
Yeah. And I can remember, I don't know, it was at least a couple of months, if it wasn't 6 months, I don't know. It was sometime after that that I was really upset and I was walking at night. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, so it didn't matter. And I was walking and I had a song on repeat and, it was just kind of in the wallows of sadness or whatever. And the question finally came to me, why did he feel so much like home? Okay. Well, I didn't know this at that time because I didn't study in astrology, but now I know there's a way
Mhm.
you can look and say, this is why the person feels like home to you.
Yeah.
Okay. But at that point, I didn't know. And then I had this memory of me. I used to ride my bike all the time. Um, I used to ride my bike 10 to 12 miles a day, basically.
Wow.
So whatever I was doing, I still would ride my bike. So it's basically I would call that my time. I actually in high school even called it absorbing.
Mhm.
Um, and I used to, you just daydream. You just like, I'm riding my bike. I'm in a safe space and there's nothing going on. I'm happy because I like riding my bike. And every now and then I have to kind of like come out of it because I have to worry about a car going by or something like that. And I can remember riding my bike on Velda. I don't know if you know it, but Veldaderi Road is actually the
Oh,
road.
yeah.
So I
Totally
was
know.
out there, and this was, years and years ago. So like, wasn't what it is now, but
That was
um,
in the middle of nowhere then.
that was in the middle of nowhere. So I remember going by that farm, and I was like, I think I'd like to marry somebody who has a farm because I want to play on the farm, and all this like daydreamy stuff, right? And so here I am asking why my husband felt so much like home, and this memory pops up in my head. And I'm like, oh. And then I start to try and remember what I was daydreaming about. And everything that I daydreamed about with any vigor is what he was and what the whole experience was. So
Wow.
he's dead. It's gone. It's over.
Mhm.
But and then I started to remember, okay, so what was that like? And I have had experiences since then that I just kind of know. So it's like, it feels similar to the way you're describing is like, oh, look, that house is on the market. There's a little bit of excitement there. Um, I don't know how to describe it. There's excitement, there's contentment, it's almost like you're kind of in the zone, you're experiencing whatever is going on at the moment. So you're in
Mhm.
the now, but there's also excitement for that thing. And then it's also like laying it to rest and being like, okay, well, whatever, if it happens, it happens. And I can remember my current husband, my second husband now. I know this is going to sound weird, but basically, I think I was in McDonald's one time and I had been a widow for a while and I saw this man with his child. I really don't remember anything about the child. It was just a normal child. It wasn't like it was misbehaved or anything. Um, and I don't know what it was, but something about his energy that I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want. Like it was just something really solid about that. And I know that I manifested my husband because of that. And I knew at that moment that I didn't have to worry about when it was going to happen. I mean, going through life, you don't know when it's going to happen. And sometimes I
Right.
feel like you don't have a clue. But if you have that in the background, it's like you're experiencing like it's already going to happen. And so really it's just a matter of time.
And you're when you're talking, it made me remember to answer your question about how do I feel when okay.
Yeah.
So I remember an example like that, and I was living in Atlanta, and I was driving to Middle Georgia, going to Macon actually, with one of my coworkers. And I used to love driving past the airport and watching the planes, hoping planes would be taking off over my car as I was driving there, and her name is Sherry. And so we're driving down the road and she's driving. And I just said, as we're going past the airport, I said, wow, I love going places on airplanes. That was all I said. And the next week, I got a job offer for another company to fly up and down the East Coast to go places on airplanes and sell stuff. Because the place where I was working was all local or drivable stuff. It wasn't airplane travel, and
So and like that, really fast.
Yeah, I miss going places on airplanes, and then boom, I get another job out of nowhere. I wasn't looking for a job.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they say like, I think I would call it not aligned energy when you've got, because we all fluctuate, right? The energy flows. So we fluctuate in between being aligned or not being aligned or whatever. But the more we can stay in the alignment, I think the faster it comes.
Yeah.
So I was at McDonald's. I saw this guy. Yes, I was in alignment. I felt good about it. That was a good thing. But that lasted all of like at max 15 seconds, right? Then I go back to my kids and then I'm occupied with that. And then I'm sure there were memories that were tugged about, oh, now you're alone and you don't have your husband here, their father, that kind of stuff. So that would be misaligned energy. To go back and forth between those. But I think the more that you're in that aligned space where you're happy and content and maybe there's some emotion, but total relaxation, that it happens faster. So maybe that's why you don't remember it, because you're just aligned.
Maybe. And I've also tried to use that tool, that technique again in other ways, like instead of I miss going places on airplanes, I miss having a nice warm body to cuddle with at night or somebody to cook in the kitchen with me. And so far I've done that, but I haven't apparently been in alignment because it hasn't manifested into anything like that job just popped up.
Yeah. Well, you were with your friend, you were traveling, which you like doing.
Yeah.
Right. So there were some things that were the physical circumstances were positive and supporting. Whereas if you're sitting, because they say that too about manifestation, you have to be really careful about what you're asking for. Like you said, I really like flying. You didn't say, I wish I had a job where I could fly, or I wish I could spend more time in an airplane, because saying it that way is noticing that you don't have it, right?
Right. Yeah.
You just said it in the positive, which that actually makes a huge difference. And I've even seen that, I think like maybe it was November or possibly December. I did a quick 3-day energy thing. It was on manifestation. And we worked for one of the sessions, we worked on figuring out what you want to manifest. Okay. And she's helping a group, so it's not like one-on-one, but I had come up with this statement, which is I want to experience a life of luxurious self-care, which sounds wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Got that in less than, like as soon as we got out of the session, boom, it was right there. And then as I go through the rest of the week, I was like, oh, wait a minute. If I'm manifesting self-care, that means I need it, so I'm not sure I want to manifest that I need self-care. I just want to have access to that self-care. Right. But that's one of those fine-tuned things.
Yeah. Yeah. So and we're going to all figure it out at some point, and we're taking baby steps right now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we are. And I think, too, somebody, I don't know, and all this work that I do, like, people will talk about, but how do I make that happen? And how do I do this? And one of the questions today was, I try to stop my brain from talking so much, but I do focus on that stuff, but then the mouth just keeps going. And I'm like, okay, well, when you're actually doing that, when you're really genuinely doing it, the brain isn't going because it just stops. Like you just experience the thing, the whatever you're doing is there. And I think that's the real, that's the real key to what we call self-realization, is that you recognize that you are the one creating all this stuff. So then therefore, boom, as soon as you realize you're creating it, you realize, oh, I'm creating all my problems.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like these things. I'm going to stop creating those things. So then you go into that mode of figuring out how to change it.
Or go into the mode of being what you want.
Yeah.
Because we're human beings, we're not human doings.
Yes.
And I think we really get all balled up when we go, well, I'm going to make that. How do I make that happen? You can't make it happen. You can be it.
Yeah.
You
and
know?
be what you need to be, and then allow it to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of always on the edge. People are wanting to change everything they want in their life, but it's a much more gentle experience than, like you said, that doing part.
Yeah. And again, that's back to the balance of the male and the female. The
Mm-hmm.
doing is the masculine, the being is the feminine.
Yep. Yep.
So getting in the middle of that.
Well, I hope your timeline shift has gotten easier.
It seems to be, yes. I'm happy with it. The major drama seems to have been slipped back over to that other timeline, because I don't think there's drama on this one so much.
That's always good for me.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I didn't realize I was on a timeline that was fraught with drama until I lost the daytime.
Send inquiries, suggestions for new discussion topics, and comments to podcast@happylioncenter.com. That's podcast@happylioncenter.com. If you found this content enjoyable or helpful, please comment, like, share, and download. Donations are appreciated and help us to produce more of similar content. Consider making a contribution at the links in the description box. Your support is greatly appreciated. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Happy Lion Center, and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. None of the content provided should be considered a substitute for legal, financial, medical, psychiatric advice, or as care from a certified professional.